Holly Herrick no longer lives in Charleston, South Carolina, but lives in historic Williamsburg, Virginia. But her recipes are still being used here in the Lowcountry. Today, I talk one-on-one with the famed chef, author, and entrepreneur and college professor for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Holly Herrick, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
It's a pleasure to be here. I always enjoy talking with you and seeing your smiling face, Quintin.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. We know you as an accomplished author. You are a legendary chef. You are a college professor. You love dogs. You're an entrepreneur. And on your Facebook page, I went back and looked at it and it says this quote, "I love all things delicious, pure and real." What are those things right now in the midst of COVID?
Well, I just feel like all those things are even more true for me now than ever. Just appreciating life, appreciating the beauty, appreciating the sun coming up, going down, the birds in the trees, my dogs, delicious food, a great laugh, a good hug, just being alive. And more than ever, I think there's a sadness, I think, in the souls of many that I see, but also a sense of joy. I think it's more so. Are you finding that? Can you relate to what I'm talking about?
I was going to ask, how is your soul?
I hope it's good. I mean, I feel like it's really alive and pure, but I'm not perfect. I think I'm more aware than ever of just trying to be empathetic and kind to others as much as possible, because I think I'm more aware than ever that we're all going through something hard right now together in this time and place in the world. And it certainly doesn't hurt to reach out as much as possible.
Exactly right. And you also said that you love cooking. You have a heart, as you mentioned, and we know you love to laugh, you have intelligence, and you love pets. Let me divert for a second, Holly. What was your comfort food during quarantine?
Oh boy, too much of it, I think, because I have lost 13 pounds since I got on the scale. And never in my life have I gained weight really easily.
Wow.
So, I mean, I tell you what I was eating. It wasn't my usual lots of vegetables. I mean, I was eating them too, but I was getting a little bit eating things I normally wouldn't eat, at least not with the frequency. I was eating them, like in particular Talenti gelato ice cream, in particular double chocolate and their pistachio. Trouble. Also Lay's potato chips. These are things that I don't normally buy with frequency, but my teeter here in Williamsburg, and probably there too, is doing a lot of BOGOs on things like that. Talenti ice cream, buy 2 get 3 free.
Right.
Same thing with potato chips. And what else was it that I was? Oh, and pizza, frozen pizza. But I know, and I'm supposed to be a French chef, and also I love cooking with produce. So yeah, I gained like 20 pounds. 13 are gone. About 7 more to go, and I'll be back on track. So yeah, I just think there's a heightened awareness that comes out of all of it, don't you?
And that brings me to my next question, because what foods have really advanced you as a French chef and a professional chef?
What foods do I like to cook with?
Or what foods have actually advanced your career as a French and professional chef?
Oh, influenced. Well, French was I grew up in the country. I'm basically a country girl. I grew up in the country in New England. We had a farm and a garden and a goat and a cow and a pig, Malachi. But so we always ate I always ate from the land, as a child, which was completely uncool in the 70s because, everybody else where I was living was, eating packaged like Swanson dinners, and they got to eat Oreos and drink Kool-Aid. But so I've always cooked from seasonal stuff. So, and then when I started my French training, I really that's a big part of French cooking too. Really, any good cooking, as you know, is really cooking with what's seasonal and fresh. And then the French, of course, like to stir in pretty often a good amount of butter. And the eggs play a big role in cuisine and pastry. Of course, there's bread. And then, of course, cheese. cheese, glorious cheese, which I think I'll have a weakness for till the end of my days. I love Goat Cheese Cow there in Charleston.
Great. Yes.
Just love that place, Patty and Trudy, and they even have delicious bread there. It used to be trouble for me to go in there because I just couldn't get out of there without like 3 pounds of cheese.
And I
missed it.
Yeah, and I went there for twice for food this past summer. Yeah, amazing.
Smart.
Great. Oh yes, absolutely. And you know, you talk about goat, sheep, and cow. You've heard the news about so many of these iconic restaurants and other restaurants in Charleston closing down because of COVID. Where are you emotionally?
Really sad. I'm really sad about it. I was just watching Danny Meyer yesterday on one of the news shows, the MSNBC, and they were, talking about the stimulus for restaurants. And, I know that there's a lot of good people out there in many industries, including airlines. And I know a lot of friends in the airline and also in the tourism, of course, businesses and events, and all of them are tied so closely together. But I just feel like of all the industries to really get stuck, it just really stinks that if the restaurant industry is really stuck in this metal, because almost everybody I know that in the restaurant world, and I know that you work in it too, or have worked in it, Quintin, are good people. They've got good hearts. They're natural nurturers. They like to feed and take care of people, sure. And it's in their blood. Yeah. So they probably, I am part of a Chef's Go program here I'm an instructor there, and it's a culinary program at one of the community colleges here, Thomas Nelson Community College. It's a wonderful school, but it's also sort of suspended. Everything's suspended with that. But I do think there is some good that will come out of it, and to some degree has come out of it for those that survive. The small mom and pop shops, I pray for them really every day. But I do think that, for the consumer, for you, me, the people that go into the restaurants, there will be a continued renewed appreciation for the good work that they do. And I also believe that to some extent, the sort of massive emphasis on cleanliness and hygiene and disease control, there's never can be enough of that really in a restaurant, in a professional kitchen. So some of that will probably linger for quite some time. And I do think though that this will not last forever. I do think there will be a vaccine, and there will be matters of recourse as this virus, hopefully reaches its end, or is more easily managed, and that eventually people will be able to go back to restaurants and to theaters. But I think we're going to all be scarred for a little while.
Yeah. And let me turn to some good news and talk about your ebook right now. Mr. Perfect Comes Home, Wonder Pets World, Book 1. What got you from writing, books about food and cooking to now saying, hey, I want to write a book about pets?
I know. Well, I've written 10 cookbooks over the course of 10 years. And I love cookbooks, and I love doing them. And I'm very grateful for the opportunities they presented. However, I'm a little tired of it. And I feel like, partially COVID sort of ignition, it's just like, okay, I've been talking about doing this for a long time, so now it's time to do it. So Mr. Perfect Comes Home is about my cat, Mr. Perfect. And I have a cat, Sid, and a dog, named Rocky. And they all are just the most wonderful little personalities. Of course, everybody thinks that about their pets and children. But I feel like they have stories to tell. And I tried to pitch it to my publishers, and neither one of them really wanted it. It just wasn't it's not really their genre. And and when I was trying to pitch it to other publishers out there in the COVID world, everything was basically closed down. So I said to myself, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and self-publish these on Kindle, and it's easy and fun. And so it's Mr. Perfect is really about Mr. Perfect, who's really a cat who thinks he's a dog, but he has this very special voice, is literally and figuratively. He has this very tender heart and a lot of love in it. But he doesn't meow. He meows. He says meow, meow. And in the story, it's that his sense of self and his love and his special voice, meow, and his smarts that get him. He gets lost in a snowstorm after he has to leave home with his mother, Miss Kit Kat, and his brother and sister, and he has to go be a big grown-up pet with a little boy named Max and his dog Norman.
Wow.
But he goes and gets lost in a snowstorm, and he has a big red scarf that he ties. That was a gift from his mother, and she gave him a second one when he left. He ties one around his tail and another one around his paw, and he meows his way, and he gets found in the snowstorm, and technically gets found again in his new home.
Wow. Let me break that down a little bit. Mr. Perfect is a happy member of the cat family, as you mentioned. Who is Mr. Perfect these days?
Mr. Perfect is my Mr. Perfect, or Mr. Perfect
the book, the cat, yes.
Yeah, okay. So, because there's a funny story, because once before, when I was selling my house in Charleston, I had Mr. Perfect and my dog Rocky in my car for the 800th time. I was showing the house, and I was eating at a restaurant, but I could see the car, and I had the car running because that AC had to be on, and it's keyless, so I had it locked. Well, Mr. Perfect decides to put his little paw right on the window thing, which I forgot to lock, and get out the window right there on James Island, right there at the Harris Teeter, right on Folly Road. Very scary. Right. So he goes running off, and I'm running. A lot of people in Charleston know me, fortunately not here, but I'm like, Mr. Perfect, Mr. Perfect. My friend Lori's like, that's so hilarious. You were crying for him, but I found him. No, Mr. Perfect now is, he's a 12-year-old cat. He's white and gray tuxedo cat. He's very frail. He's not frail. He's slight. He's very dapper. I could almost imagine wearing a bow tie if he were a person. But he's just a really sweet little cat, and he's a cat that saved my life, really, because I found him at Pet Helpers after I'd lost my dog and a cat a week apart from each other, sad circumstances, and I was beside myself. So I went in there and I found him, and he found me, and that's sort of the story of Mr. Perfect. And that was his name, Mr. Perfect, with 2 R's.
Right. And describe the cat family. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yes, he's part of the cat family. Oh. But you mean in the book he's part of the cat family? He's a sweet little kitten, and he loves his mother, and his mother really loves him, and he's kind of a mama's boy. And he has part of the lesson that Mr. Perfect learns, I guess, that we all have to learn, and even pets, is that eventually you have to grow up and leave home. And so that was kind of a hard lesson for Mr. Perfect, but he got through it. And in the book, he's really happy. So the next book I'm going to be working on is Sidlicious, which is about Sid, who is a country cat, and he's a big, sturdy cat. And I really, Quintin, to be honest, want to get to the point. I'm sort of going through this creatively. It's kind of like, I feel like that scene from Demi Moore in Ghost when she's making the model of clay. I kind of feel this is what this is, because it's so new for me, and I'm sort of kind of spewing it out and trying to refine it as I go. But I want to get to the point where food is integrated into the stories. It's a theme, and if not with this series, I really would like to do some comedic novel / food kind of series, but I just don't, I've tried to do it, and it hasn't worked out right for me yet. I must be going through some sort of creative evolution or de-evolution, one or the other.
Oh, yikes. Well, I know.
I think it's a period of growth. And, sometimes it's a little bit like when you like a snake sheds its skin, or right, whatever it is that you're going through, it's kind of feels a little funny at first, but then you get your bearings. It's kind of where we are.
Exactly right. And I want to go back to the book, because you say in the book that, obviously a surprise trip to a new human family and getting lost in a bad snowstorm, as you mentioned, helped him realize how special those qualities are. What is that new human family that Mr. Perfect was introduced to?
Do you see Mr. Perfect?
Oh, yes, there he is.
He just came in to say hello.
Oh, hi.
Hi, Mr. Perfect. See, he doesn't know he's a cat.
Right.
Hey, hi. Oh. There's his meow. So the question was, I'm sorry, Quintin, what was the place where did he grow, or what was the question? I'm sorry.
No worries. It's, obviously in the book you say, the description of the book, it says this: a surprise trip to a new human family and getting lost in a bad snowstorm, as you mentioned earlier, helped him realize how special those qualities are. Tell me, who's the new human family?
So it's a little boy, Max, and his dog, Norman, and the mother, who doesn't really have a name in the book. She's just referred to as Max's mother. So they're all sort of, they're young, but there's a young boy and a very playful, kind of frolicking dog. He's actually, I envision him as a German Shepherd, or not a German Shepherd, Saint Bernard, but I don't really. At first, I described him as such, and a friend of mine said, "No, you don't need to do that." So, kind of a big, lumbering, friendly dog, and they're sort of all a little bit. It's kind of like the Island of Misfit Toys a little bit.
Right.
They're all sort of clumsy and awkward, but very loving, and and they're very different in size. And one's a dog, one's a cat, and one's a little boy. So they're all very different creatures, but they all have a sweetness. And Max right away wants to love Mr. Perfect. He wants to take Mr. Perfect home, and Mr. Perfect at first isn't so sure. He's just like, I don't know, he really didn't want to leave his mama. And then he just remembered lessons that she had taught him over his life, and that he just really had to try to just embrace the love of others and share his love with others. And eventually he would find his way to his new home. And that's pretty much what the book is about. And he ends up being very happy. He kind of grows during his adventures, particularly, I think, especially being lost in the cold snowstorm, because he really had only seen snow once before in his life. And it was just flurries when he was a kitten. And this is a really big snowstorm, and it's really cold and scary, and he's very lost. I mean, he can't see anything. It's a blizzard. Wow. So he has to get smart fast, and he does. And then his little friends come and find him it's really kind of sweet. It's a sweet story. I was trying to capture the voice of Mr. Perfect as I envision it. And I think there's a term for it. I'm just not sure I'm going to get it right. Amorphosize, when you try to make animals, give them human-like qualities. But I think that we're all sort of guilty of that. If all of us who own or have owned or loved pets, I don't know if you have any or have, but
no, can't have them here.
Okay. Well, I don't have children, and I always wanted them, and it's not going to happen in this lifetime. So I have my dog and my 2 cats, and my boyfriend Michael has 2 sons that they probably would just absolutely shudder to hear me say this, because they have a lovely mother, but they kind of feel a little bit maternal towards them, sort of remotely.
Right. Exactly right. And you talk about that bad snowstorm. How long was Mr. Perfect in that snowstorm?
I don't have it delineated. I don't turn it from a night to day thing, but it seems like a really, really long time to Mr. Perfect. And it's, I probably conceptually it was probably 3 or 4 hours, but I don't delineate the timeline per se, because it's like for 5 to 9-year-old children. It's actually a good idea to maybe I should do that. But it's a really long time, and he's really cold, and he's really scared, and he just keeps going. He just screams me, wow, because his mother always told him that even though nobody else ever talked, like nobody else said me wow, that was part of what made him special. And so he decided to use his special skill and his special voice.
Yeah,
and it really is what saved him. That and the using the red scarf that was given to him with love from his mother. So I think it's an extremely sweet story. It's not, I'm not as clever as even, and Winnie the Pooh is like one of my favorite. Winnie the Pooh, and also excuse me, knock on wood, I don't have COVID, but I do have allergies. We've got a very high ragweed and pollen count here right now. It's beautiful, but it's what was I going to say? And I also, when I was growing up, loved the Little House on the Prairie series, and also Charlotte's Web. The Charlotte's Web, those were some of my favorite stories when I was growing up. And it's funny because it seems like it'd be simple to write a children's book, but it's actually really hard. I think it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard because you have to be a kid again. You have to think like a kid again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you have to really... it's like the longer I continue to live, the more I realize that things that are simple, to keep things simple and to keep them pure, it becomes harder and harder.
Yes.
Because it's so easy to get. It's just I just feel like the world has become so loud, and I don't know if it's social media or what. It just feels like everybody's just sort of screaming at each other when nobody's really hearing each other. So I feel like that. Do you feel like that?
There's a lot of, a lot of people I talk to basically say there's a lot of tension out there. So, they may agree with you.
Yeah. And I think that there's wisdom in finding silence and just listening, I try to do it, and you can see that I'm a bit of a jabbermouth. I always talk more than I probably should. But as I was telling somebody yesterday, I think it's because I was the youngest in a family of 4 and the smallest, very much of the runt of 2 brothers and a sister. That maybe that's why Mr. Perfect gets the soft touch in the book, because he's kind of the runt. He's kind of a little bit of a runt too.
Yeah, and I know that obviously the Amazon describes this. They and a few new friends, meaning obviously Mr. Perfect, help him find his way back home to love, warmth, comfort, and a newer, more grown-up self. Who are Mr. Perfect new friends?
So that's Max, the little boy,
Yeah.
and Norman, the dog.
Okay.
Because at first they seem so foreign to him, because he lives. His father works at the Perfect Inn. He's the greeter at the inn, and he lives in his world that he lived in before he left to go to be Max's pet it's very small. It's very warm and very loving, but it's really just his family, his mama and his Kit Kat, and his brother Cat and Kit are his sister and brother. Kit Kat's my favorite naughty treat this time of year. I've had to be really, really good to stay away from. I love crunchy, salty, sweet.
Right.
So those Kit Kat bars and those Butterfingers and that nobody's giving out, because I don't know about there, but we don't have Halloween here. We're not having Halloween here. Are you? Are they doing Halloween in Kingston?
I think it's going to be virtual or something like that. Maybe. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. I guess it's sort of, if we're not having it here. I don't know if there's a woman at the pool where I swim, and she's from Japan, and this will be her first Halloween, and she asked me about it, and I wasn't sure, because I live in a neighborhood where we don't really have it so much as in, not like when I lived in Charleston. Wow, Halloween was such a big deal down there on Gibbs Street. Wow, it was just an event. It went on for hours and hours. But I said, I don't know. So I looked into it, and I guess Halloween's been canceled. But anyway, so he's just in this Mr. Perfect is in this very sheltered world. Like, if we're lucky, all of us, I think, hopefully at least start our lives that way, just very sheltered and very loved. But he was almost too sheltered. And when he goes out he doesn't really realize he hadn't really met a dog before, and he hadn't ever met a little boy before. So at first he's kind of scared, but then he realizes that they're really loving. They're different. They move differently. They speak with different voices. They move more quickly. Like Norman, the dog, is really big, and he bounces big and clumsily. So they're just very different. So I think the message in the book is really just that we're all more alike than we seem, and it's just a matter of opening our ears and our eyes and our hearts to new experiences and new friends, and that's what Mr. Perfect does. He's actually really cute.
Oh, I bet he is. And I know I want to ask you this too, Holly, but what have you learned from Mr. Perfect?
I think all of those things. I mean, when I found Mr. Perfect, the real cat, and
Right.
they're kind of mirror images of each other. But when I found Mr. Perfect, the real cat, the cat, I was really lost. I mean, I really was lost. I was in not maybe the worst place in my entire life. I was absolutely heartbroken, because I wasn't expecting my dog to get sick and die so quickly. And then within a few days, I had another cat. Within 7 days, it was 7 days later, I had to put Tammy and the dog down. I've done that before, and that's hard as anything. But then she was a girl cat, and her name was Chutney Cat, and she was so sweet, and she was so close with Tan Man, and that she just rolled over and just basically stopped eating, and she died of heartbreak 7 days later. So all my children were gone over the course of 7 days, and I'd never been. I felt turned inside out, but I felt so much like that I felt incapable of getting another dog. So I finally realized one day I had to go do something. So I went to the pet helpers, and that Mr. Perfect, there were, I don't know how many cats, maybe 300 in there, and also several kittens. So I looked at, there were a lot. There were 8 rooms, maybe not that many. I don't know. Just a heck more than I expected. And also some dogs, but I went to see the dogs. But there's Mr. Perfect. He's a very handsome little cat with like a little pink tongue and a pink nose and soft gray and white. And I just saw him. My eyes went to him, and I kind of started holding him. So they did the meow, and they really called him Mr. Perfect because he has the loudest purr. And I fell in love, and I said, I think I want this cat. And they told me that he was 8. And I said, wow. I said, I didn't know he was that old because I just lost the 2 pets. And we know as they get older. But I said, you know what? I like this cat. I'm going to take this cat.
Yes.
And it turns out he likes to walk on a leash, and he really does think he's a dog. He doesn't know he's a cat.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing.
So next is going to be Sidlicious. He's also a tuxedo cat. He's a big, sturdy cat. He was a wild cat in the country, and he and Rocky became best friends walking along, and they still are the best of friends, the most unlikeliest and best of friends. So not quite sure how that story is going to come together, but I need to get with it because I think we're going to be starting the school situation. The chefs go again, and I hope we are in February. So I need to get this done. Maybe it'll be my Christmas present to myself. I've had some sales. I haven't been really aggressive promoting it. There's really almost something I did more for myself so far.
Wow, amazing. And I know you'll get the other book done too.
Oh yeah, and then I have several notes. I've got all these stick-it notes. I can just start unsticking them and doing them.
Sure. Yeah, I know you'll make that happen.
Well, yes.
Oh, absolutely.
I know you're the interviewee, but I want to know how you are. How's Charleston? How are you?
Oh, everything's great here. Everything's great. Everything's great. Yeah, everything's great. Yeah, everything is great.
I need to get up.
Come back, and hopefully you'll come back and visit us.
I do need to come back. I was there in February for a speaking engagement, and that was just before everything started, and it was so beautiful. It's hard for me to be. I lived there 20 years, so it was like, it's part of my soul, Charleston.
Yes.
But I do love Williamsburg. I'm enjoying it here.
Yeah, a lot of history there as well, just like here. Yeah.
Yeah, but the food isn't as delicious. I hate to say it. At least not in restaurants. It's just not. It doesn't have the diversity. I mean, it has a fantastic history. Oh, Mr. Perfect is back.
Oh yes, hey.
It has a fantastic history that's in many ways very similar to Charleston, but in many ways it's very different. So it's not Lowcountry ingredients, and it's not Lowcountry history, so it's different. But it's delicious. I've been cooking a lot more at home. I'm really enjoying cooking at home a lot, I guess, with COVID.
Yeah. Wow, amazing. Well, the Honorable Holly Herrick, thank you so much for your time, and again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you for having me, Quintin. It's always a pleasure sending you a big, what do we say, virtual hug.
Yes, ma'am, indeed. Absolutely.
Thank you for having me, Quintin. Wishing you all the best.
Likewise.